When I stepped into that ballroom, I was supposed to be invisible. Just another suit in the background. Just another name on a lanyard. That's what I wanted. That's what I planned. I'd even practiced the small talk in the mirror that morning. Nice to meet you. I'm Ellison. I work with data. Not, I'm Ellison, the guy who used to be a husband. But then someone dropped a wine glass, and the room turned. And there she was, my wife. Or whatever you call someone who still wears your last name, but hasn't seen your face in 3 years. And she was crying. Let me make one thing clear. I wasn't supposed to be there. This wasn't my industry anymore. I'd buried that version of myself like a corpse. I hadn't spoken to anyone from my old life since the night I walked away without a suitcase, without a note, without a goodbye. So how the hell did she end up here? More importantly, how did she recognize me? I looked different. Lost weight. Grew a beard. Switched glasses. Different clothes. Different voice. Different man. And yet she saw me. I didn't know what to do, so I just stared back. I should have left. Should have turned and slipped out before anyone else noticed. But I was frozen. And then I heard someone whisper near the shrimp table. Is that her husband? The one who disappeared? So much for being invisible. Let me back up. No, not to the love story. There was barely one left by the time I vanished. I'm not here to romanticize it. I'm here to tell you why a grown man walked out of his own life and didn't look back for over 1,000 days. And why the woman who watched me leave, without lifting a finger to stop me, cried like she saw a ghost when I walked back in. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't closure. It was what I had in my hand that night. Because I didn't come empty-handed. I came with the envelope. And she knew what was in it. Everyone else just saw a nervous guy at a networking event holding a sealed envelope. But to her, it might as well have been a loaded gun. She mouthed 2 words across the room. 2 words she hadn't said to me in over 1,000 days. I'm sorry. Too late for that. Way too late. I didn't open the envelope. Not yet. I just held it. Tightly. If you've never had your entire nervous system light on fire in the middle of a chandelier-lit ballroom, let me paint you a picture. Imagine your heart tries to climb out of your throat while your lungs decide now's a good time to forget how to work. That's what it felt like the second her eyes met mine. People around her were still talking, still laughing, still sipping cheap white wine out of overpriced stemware, but she was frozen. Just like I was. Marjorie. That's her name. I guess I should mention that now. But saying her name still makes my jaw clench, so don't expect me to say it often. She started walking toward me. Not fast. Like she didn't trust her legs to obey. I don't know what I expected her to say when she reached me, but it sure as hell wasn't. Is that for me? Her voice cracked halfway through it. I looked down at the envelope. 3 years, and that's what she noticed? The envelope. Not, where have you been? Not, why did you leave? Not even a damn hi. I didn't answer. I just slipped it back into my coat pocket and turned slightly. Not enough to walk away. Just enough to remind her she didn't own my attention anymore. She grabbed my wrist. That part still plays on loop in my head. Because that was the exact moment everything in me screamed, don't fall for it again. Don't fall for the trembling hands, the mascara clinging to the edges of her lashes, the lips that used to say I love you before saying you're too much the next day. I whispered, because I knew she'd hear me. You should have told me about the closet. Her face drained like I'd slapped her. And that's when I knew. She never thought I found it. Let me take you back. Back to the night I left. It was raining. Of course it was. Like the sky knew something was wrong. She was on another team-building weekend. I was supposed to be gone at a conference, but my flight got canceled. So I came home early. Quietly. There was a noise upstairs, a bump, a scrape. I thought maybe she'd come back, too. But no. The house was empty. So I followed the sound. To our bedroom. To the walk-in closet. Where I found the shoebox. Top shelf. Behind her old prom dress she hadn't worn since college. It was duct-taped shut like it was never meant to be opened. But I opened it. Inside were photographs. A journal. A burner phone. And a necklace I'd never seen before, tucked into a velvet pouch. The journal was the worst part. Not because of what was in it, but because of what wasn't. Not a single page about me. Just someone else. His name was written dozens of times. Different colors of ink. Different handwriting. The kind of obsessive repetition that only belongs to people who think they've found their escape. And I realized I was just the placeholder. The guy she married while waiting for the man she really wanted to come back around. So I packed nothing, took my car, and left everything, including my name. And now here she was, in a silk dress, at a hotel I wasn't supposed to be at, asking me if the envelope was for her. She was trembling, trying to hold eye contact, failing. "What did you do with it?" she asked. I smiled. Not the kind of smile that forgives. The kind of smile that says, "You should have burned it when you had the chance." I didn't hand her the envelope. Not yet. She didn't deserve the closure. Not until she understood what it really meant. So I tucked it deeper into my coat and looked her straight in the eyes. She was blinking too fast, trying to process what I'd said. She probably thought I'd destroyed everything. The photos, the journal, the burner phone. She thought the past was safe, like a locked box at the bottom of a lake. It wasn't. I kept everything. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. Because when someone rewrites your life without your permission, you hold on to whatever scraps of truth you can find. 3 years ago, the shoebox felt like a detonation. But over time, it became something else. A map. A slow, rotting confession she didn't know she'd left behind. Every entry in that journal peeled away the version of her I used to love. The way she described me in those pages, it was like reading a stranger's name wearing my face. Too quiet. Too sensitive. Too needy. Never the man she pictured. And then came the part one never told anyone. The photograph. Tucked in the back. Folded in half. The edges yellowed like it had been touched too many times. It wasn't of her and the man I expected. It wasn't even romantic. It was a child. A boy. Maybe 7 or 8 years old. Standing in a kitchen I didn't recognize. Wearing one of my old t-shirts. And smiling. There was no note. No date. No explanation. That's when I started to spiral. I thought, did she have a child? Did she lie to me about something that big? Or worse, was she seeing someone who had a kid and pretending she had a family somewhere else? I spent weeks looking at that photo, scanning every tiny background detail, trying to piece together who the kid was, where it was taken, what it meant. I even ran a reverse image search. Nothing. And now, as she stood in front of me in that ballroom with mascara running down her cheeks, I knew she was about to lie. "You weren't supposed to find that," she said, voice like glass underfoot. "You weren't even supposed to come home. You said that like you planned it." I replied, keeping my voice level. Like I was never meant to see the truth. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked away. It wasn't what it looked like. Oh, there it was. The classic line. What exactly did I misunderstand? I asked. The burner phone? The name written over and over like you were in high school again? Or the photo? The one with the kid. Remember that one? She looked like she might pass out. So I leaned in, just enough that no one else could hear, and whispered, "Who is he?" Her hands were trembling now. I saw her glance toward the exit, like she was calculating how fast she could disappear. But she didn't run. She stayed. That's how I knew this wasn't just guilt. This was fear. "I don't know how you got that," she said, barely above a whisper. "That's not mine. That photo. He's not." She stopped herself. Changed direction. "It doesn't matter. You don't know what I was going through. You don't know the full story." "No," I said, stepping back. "But I know enough to never come home again." I turned to leave. And that's when she broke. I don't mean the kind of crying you see in movies. I mean full collapse. Knees buckling, shoulders shaking, sobs pouring out like she'd been holding them in since the day I left. People stared. A man in a tuxedo rushed over. She waved him off like she couldn't breathe. And I just kept walking. The envelope still in my coat. Because the real twist? I still hadn't looked inside it either. Not since I sealed it 2 years ago. And deep down, a part of me was scared. Not of what she did, but of what I might do once I remembered what I wrote. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the hotel room, fully dressed, still wearing the suit from the ballroom. The envelope untouched on the nightstand like a ticking clock I was too afraid to wind. You'd think after 3 years of silence, of building walls high enough to keep even her memory out, that seeing her again would have made me feel something clear. Rage. Closure. Relief. But no, it was nothing like that. It was confusion. And that terrified me more than anything. Because if I was still confused, I wasn't healed. I stared at the envelope for hours. The same one she'd noticed the second she saw me. The one she reached for before she said a single word. The one that stopped her cold. Not my face. Not my sudden return from the dead. The envelope. She knew what it was. But I didn't. That's the part one hadn't told you yet. I sealed that envelope 2 years ago during a low point. I was in a tiny apartment above a pawn shop in a city where no one knew my name. The heater was broken. I hadn't eaten properly in days. And something inside me said, write it down now, while it still hurts. I did. Every word poured out of me like blood from an open wound. But I was too scared to reread it. I just folded the pages, sealed them, and kept the envelope close like it was a totem of pain I couldn't let go of. Until the moment I saw her again. I'd almost forgotten I still had it. Almost. That night, sitting in the dim light of that hotel room, I finally opened it. The paper was wrinkled, ink slightly smudged, my handwriting more frantic than I remembered. The first few lines hit me like a punch to the chest. If you're reading this, it means I'm either finally brave enough to hand it to you, or cruel enough to let you suffer. God, I forgot how angry I'd been when I wrote this. Not dramatic anger. Quiet, festering rage that builds in men like me. The quiet ones who smile when they're dying inside because they're too afraid of confrontation. I kept reading. I gave you everything I had. Every part of me. I even gave you permission to hurt me, as long as it meant you stayed. That's how pathetic I was. But I found the box. I saw the photos. I read the journal. I know about Zeke. Zeke. That was the name. It came back like cold water down my spine. That was the name written in her journal over and over again. The name on the texts I wasn't supposed to see. The man she kept writing to like they were starring in a secret life together. I remember reading messages from her that said things like, I wish I could just disappear with you. And he doesn't suspect anything. He being me. And Zeke being whoever the hell he was. But in that letter I wrote, there was something more chilling. I found out where he works. I saw the school. I know who the boy is. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. Because back when I wrote that letter, I must have tracked him down. I must have found the kid in the photo. But I didn't remember any of it. I had no memory of going that far. Maybe I buried it. Maybe I was too afraid of what I might have done if I let myself remember. I turned the page. And there it was. An address. Written in my own handwriting. But it wasn't from this state. It was 2 states over. A name was scrawled underneath. Z. M. Unit 27. I stared at it for so long the ink blurred. And here's the worst part. I wanted to go there. I wanted to see this man. To look him in the eye. Not for revenge. Not even for answers. I just wanted to see the kind of man a woman would throw everything away for. And if the boy was his? I had one question left. Why was he wearing my shirt? The drive took 7 hours and 17 minutes. I didn't plan to go. I told myself I was just curious. That I needed to clear my head. But as soon as I folded the letter back into its envelope and slid it into the glove compartment, I knew exactly where I was headed. Unit 27. The address haunted me. Not just because it was written in my own handwriting, but because I couldn't remember ever finding it. Like someone else had written it while I was sleepwalking through the worst months of my life. And now that I knew it existed, pretending not to care was impossible. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not that there was anyone left to tell. My phone was silent. My email untouched. For 3 years I'd kept the world at arm's length, and now it finally felt like it was collapsing back toward me. The neighborhood was unremarkable. Rows of identical beige buildings with tired paint and sagging fences. A half-deflated kiddie pool sat abandoned on someone's lawn. Wind chimes clinked softly in the breeze, pretending everything was peaceful. Unit 27 was tucked at the end of the row. 2nd floor. Rusted railing. Dead plants on the balcony. I parked across the street and sat for almost half an hour, engine off, just watching. Nothing. No cars pulling in. No movement behind the curtains. The whole place felt still, undisturbed. And just when I started thinking this was a waste of time, the door opened. A boy stepped out. Same age. Same face. It was him. The boy from the photograph. Only now he looked older. Taller. His hair was messy, sun-kissed. He was holding a worn basketball and talking to someone just inside the doorway. Then he laughed. Loud, real. That kind of laugh you can't fake. And then a man stepped out behind him. Tall. Lean. Sharp jaw. Tattoos down both arms. Zeke. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I knew. There was something in the way he walked, like the world owed him a favor. Like he owned every inch of the ground beneath him. And for a split second, I hated him. But not in the way I expected. I hated him because he looked free. Like he had never buried his heart beneath someone else's lies. Like he hadn't spent 3 years wondering what part of him was unlovable. Like he hadn't been erased. I stayed in the car and watched them walk down the street, laughing about something I couldn't hear. I wanted to follow. I wanted to walk right up and say, I know what you did. But I didn't even know what that meant anymore. What had he done? If the boy was his, fine. So be it. But if the boy was someone else's? Or worse, mine? That's what I couldn't shake. The photograph haunted me for a reason. The shirt. The face. That smile. I didn't recognize the kitchen in the background, but I did recognize the damn shirt. It was from a charity run I'd done in 2015. Limited print. I never saw anyone else wearing it. I hadn't seen mine since it vanished from our laundry. I leaned back in my seat, heart pounding. And that's when I saw the car. Not their car. Her car. Marjorie. She was here. She pulled in silently. Parked crooked. Got out like she didn't want to be seen. No makeup. Hair in a messy bun. Hoodie 2 sizes too big. She looked like someone who hadn't slept. She didn't knock. She just let herself in. And something inside me snapped. Because that wasn't the look of a woman visiting her secret lover. That was the look of someone checking in on a broken piece of her past. A piece she couldn't fix, but couldn't let go of either. I watched the door shut behind her. And I knew, without question, the boy in that house had something to do with me. Not Zeke. Me. Because you don't wear someone's shirt unless someone gave it to you. And I sure as hell never gave anything to Zeke. I didn't go to the door. Not right away. Instead, I walked. Circles, mostly. Up the block, past a rusted swing set, back to the car. Then again. I paced like a man trying to keep from unraveling. It was like there was static in my bones. Every time I passed Unit 27, I could see the shadows moving inside. Her silhouette crossing the window, the boy's laugh echoing faintly through the cheap walls. That laugh was what got me. Because it wasn't haunted. It wasn't cautious. It wasn't a laugh raised in chaos. It was light. Full. And yet somehow it made my skin crawl. Because for 3 years, I had believed I was the one left behind. The one forgotten. The one shattered by her choices. But this didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like replacement. I waited until nightfall. The sun dipped low and bled into the horizon. Porch lights flickered on one by one. The street grew quiet. Still, at 9:23 p.m., she walked out the front door. Alone. She didn't see me until she reached her car. I stepped out from between 2 parked SUVs. Calmly. Slowly. Like I had all the time in the world. She froze. I could see her face clearly in the streetlight now. No makeup. Pale. Eyes ringed with exhaustion. She looked like a ghost of the woman I used to know. Thinner, quieter, aged in ways that had nothing to do with time. She didn't run. She didn't speak. She just stared. I broke the silence first. You never meant to tell me, did you? She blinked. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, I replied. But here we are. Her keys dangled in her hand, fingers trembling slightly. She glanced back at the house. Did you talk to him? No, I said. Not yet. Her shoulders dropped like she was holding in breath. Like she was hoping, praying, I hadn't stepped too far into this. So who is he? I asked. Zeke? The kid? Tell me something, Marjorie. Anything. She looked away. And right then, I realized she was deciding. Not whether to tell the truth, but which version of it I could live with. So I pushed. Is he mine? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. And that silence, that split second of hesitation, was enough. She didn't have to say it. She didn't have to swear or scream or break down. That moment between the question and her breath told me everything. She looked at the pavement, then back up at me, and whispered, it wasn't supposed to go that far. I stepped forward. My voice broke without my permission. How far did it go, Marjorie? She blinked rapidly. It was only supposed to be emotional. I didn't think it would. I thought I was careful. You thought? She nodded. I took a test. It said negative. I didn't even know I was pregnant until it was too late. I convinced myself it had to be yours. You were still, we were still. Her voice cracked. And when you left, I didn't know how to reach you. I didn't even know what to do with myself. I thought maybe if I raised him right, none of this would matter anymore. I laughed. Bitter. Sharp. So you just replaced me with him? No, she said quickly. Zeke isn't. I'm not with him. Not like that. He doesn't even know. He thinks he's just helping. He thinks he's a godfather or whatever. I let him think that because I didn't want to unravel everything. I stared at her like I was looking at a stranger. Because I was. Why him? I asked. Out of every man in the world, why him? And that's when she said it. The line that knocked the breath out of me more than anything else had in 3 years. He listened to me, she whispered. You used to. And then, you didn't. I could have hit her. Not physically, but with words. With everything I'd been holding inside. The nights I couldn't sleep. The days I didn't eat. The apartment floor I stared at for hours because the idea of standing up felt impossible. I could have unloaded every ounce of that pain into her lap and made her carry it home. But I didn't. Instead, I turned around. I walked to my car. And she didn't stop me. She just stood there, watching me disappear. Again, the road home was silent. No music. No calls. No thoughts, even. Just the low hum of tires on asphalt and the strange, pulsing nothing that fills your chest when the person you once loved tells you the kind of truth that doesn't fix anything, only confirms what you were afraid to believe. She said the boy was mine, but she also said she thought it was me, as if she hadn't decided, as if it was all just a math problem she never finished solving. And I was supposed to be okay with that? Be grateful I was even in the equation? No, I wasn't okay. I wasn't even functioning. I pulled off the highway and parked in some nameless gas station lot halfway through the state. I sat there for hours, lights off, watching semi-trucks pass like ghosts. I thought about drinking, but didn't. I thought about calling someone, but who? I hadn't spoken to my parents in 2 years. My old friends had stopped reaching out long ago. I had no therapist, no priest, no hotline number scribbled on the back of a receipt. Just me. And the image of that boy, laughing, alive, unaware that he might be the product of someone's spiral. I reached into the glove box and pulled the envelope out again. The letter I wrote 2 years ago, the one I'd opened and read. I held it like it still had answers. But it didn't. It was written by a man who didn't exist anymore. And here's the part one haven't told you. The part one didn't even remember until sitting in that car. I never finished the letter. I stopped mid-sentence. The last line was half-written. If you ever find this, I hope you. That was it. I must have run out of energy. Or courage. Or maybe I was just too broken to know what I even hoped for. Forgiveness? Revenge? Closure? No. None of those things ever made sense to me. What I wanted, what I still wanted, was understanding. I wanted to understand how she could love me at all if she was willing to lie to my face for years. I wanted to understand what kind of man I was, if I could be erased so easily from my own life and replaced like a bad wallpaper choice. I wanted to know if the boy had my eyes, or if he'd grow up being told some other story. A cleaner one. A version of the truth that didn't involve closets and burner phones and women whispering names in their sleep that weren't mine. I sat there in that gas station parking lot and realized something awful. I couldn't go back to my life. Because there was nothing to go back to. The man who lived there was built around a lie. The new life I'd made. New job, new name, new town. That was all just a cover story for someone trying to stay hidden. I didn't build that life because I wanted to grow. I built it because I was scared. Because disappearing felt easier than unraveling. But that night, something shifted. I didn't want to disappear anymore. I wanted answers. Not from her. From him. Zeke. The man she whispered to behind my back. The man who thought he was a godfather. The man she swore didn't know the truth. That wasn't going to last. I was done playing ghost. If I was going to keep living, I needed to stop hiding. And if I was going to face this, all of it, I needed to know the truth. I looked up Zeke's name, his job, his records, and I found something I didn't expect. He wasn't just some coworker. He was someone I'd met before. Only once. Years ago. And back then, he told me something strange. A joke I didn't understand at the time. He said, "You've got no idea what she's capable of, man. Good luck." He was laughing when he said it. Now, I wasn't. The next morning, I knocked on his door. It was early. Not rude early. Just early enough to catch someone off guard. The kind of hour where defenses are still waking up and people answer honestly, because their lies haven't had time to get dressed yet. Zeke opened the door barefoot, holding a mug of coffee that said #OneGodfather. I stared at the mug for a long second, then looked him in the eye. His expression flickered. Surprise, confusion, and then something close to guilt. "Ellison," he said slowly. "Damn." He stepped out onto the porch, pulled the door shut behind him. The boy was still inside. I heard the sounds of cereal and cartoons. I didn't waste time. "I know," I said. He nodded. Not defensive. Not smug. Just quiet. Like a man who'd been waiting a long time to hear those 2 words. "I never touched her after you left," he said. I didn't ask him to say it. But I believed him. "I don't need details," I replied. "I just need one thing from you. The truth." He took a sip of coffee, looked past me, like the truth wasn't something he could say while looking someone in the eyes. "She was lost," he said. "More than you knew. It wasn't about you. You were steady. That scared her. She thought she wanted chaos, because that's what she grew up in. But when she finally had something real, she didn't know what to do with it. So she sabotaged it. I waited. And the kid? Zeke's face softened. He's yours. The words hit like an earthquake and a relief at the same time. The kind of truth that strips you down and rebuilds you in one breath. I nodded. Slowly. Like I needed to tell my body it was okay to believe it. I'm not going to fight you, he added. If you want to be in his life, I'll step back. He doesn't know the details yet. Just that you're someone important. Someone he's going to meet one day. That's what we told him. We? I asked. She's not with me, he said. She hasn't been with anyone since you left. I think she's been trying to become someone worth coming back to. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just nodded again. That day, I didn't go inside. I didn't meet my son. Not yet. But I left with something I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. Clarity. I drove home. Not back to the fake life I'd built out of fear, but to something real. I called my landlord. Quit the job. Packed a box. And I left a note on the kitchen table that just said, "Thank you for helping me survive. But now it's time to live." 2 weeks later, I saw him. My son. He ran up to me in the park wearing a hoodie that said, "Player 2. He had my eyes. My nervous smile. And when he hugged me, without hesitation, without even knowing who I used to be, I felt something unlock in my chest. I wasn't broken. I was just beginning again. And Marjorie? We didn't become lovers again. But we became something more complicated. 2 people trying to raise a good human. 2 people who hurt each other and somehow still believed in second chances. Not for themselves, but for the boy who needed both of them to try. And some days, that was enough. Other days, it was everything.